If you're intimidated to paint with colors, try the CMYK Watercolor method. I used this method to paint these lemons, this turtle, and in this video, I'll give a step-by-step demonstration painting this apple. First, we're going to talk about why you might want to consider using the CMYK method, examples, the paints I use, and then a demonstration. The original red, blue, and yellow is a limited palette. This, however, you can see is a CMYK value range. The pinks are easier to get, which means you can paint things like this. Here is someone using the CMYK method, right? He's using yellow first. Notice how it goes from light to the darker colors. So there's the yellow. Now here's the magenta. Here's the cyan, black. So with just those four colors, you can create almost anything. This is the reason why printers use these inks. The CMYK method also saves you money. I painted this using 12 colors. To get all 12 colors, I had to pay $180. But I was able to paint the same bird using the four colors, saves you about $120. Then you can spend the $120 on 2 extra tubes of the 4 colors. And it will help you to get good at mixing colors. I painted these lemons about 2 years ago. I put it in a coffee shop and it sold. And a friend of mine really wanted that. And so he said, can you paint them again? So I did. I got this. The second painting is richer in color and it looks more like the reference image. This is also done with just these 4 colors. So you can not only get the brights like you see in the fish, but you can also get little subtle things. Getting the colors dull is not a problem. Getting the colors bright, that this technique outshines the traditional red, blue, and yellow. This leaf is actually kind of dulled down. So this is a good example of this range of, you can do really bright colors, but you can also get it down to a very dull leaf. So before you get to this beautiful bird, you're going to go through the ugly stage. So the paints I use are very specific paints. It's the Daniel Smith brand. Then I use Holbein. Just message me and I can send you the links. They do cost $15 each, but they do last about 2 years. And that's you doing quite a bit of painting. Now it's time for the demonstration. One of the best things you can do, observe what you're going to paint for a little bit. Ask yourself some questions. Simple questions to ask, where are the lightest parts and where are the darkest parts? So of course, the lightest parts are right here. There's a little bit of light parts right here on the tip of the stem there, right? Where are the darkest parts? It tends to be down here towards the base of the apple. Here's some dark areas right here to just take note of. All right, then you can look at, okay, where is it like really saturated in color? Okay, right here, these reds are like really saturated. And then look at variety of textures. So, all right, you got these kind of bigger marks here on the apple, but then as it comes up, they kind of get a little bit less big and choppy. And on the side here, it's like we're probably going to be using a dry brush to capture some of those textures. And then we're noticing the lines. The lines are curved around the edges. So we want to pay attention to the direction the lines are going in. There's some lines here on the stem. And then we're noticing color. So it goes from the rich red down to a darker red. We got some greens. We got some yellows. We got some yellows that aren't very intense, right? So the more you stare at the object you're going to paint, the more likely you're going to capture more of it. I'm going to use some yellow first. All right, we start in this technique, we go for the lightest colors first. So we're going to use yellow. So here we go. And this yellow it's not like an intense yellow. It's kind of dulled down a little bit. So now here it's intense. So it's okay if we put intense yellow right here because it's going to be an intense red, right? But in other places, we want it to be kind of dull. So I'm just putting some clean water down first, kind of preparing the paper and getting it ready for the dull yellow. Right, I'm using Arches watercolor paper, cold press, 100% cotton paper. I found it to be the strongest paper. Like you can put layer after layer after layer and it doesn't cause a hole in it like really cheap watercolor paper will like give up on you, you know, if you put too many layers on it. All right, so we got water on there first. Now we're gonna get some of this yellow, and I like just using cotton paper, and it tells me exactly like how strong it is. So this isn't too strong, it's pretty dulled down, so we'll just use that right here. All right, here. Now for the highlight, we're just going to leave it white right there. That's the highlight area. All right, we start very light, and this is the ugly stage. So for those who are stopping by right now, I know it doesn't look very realistic yet, but in just 490 layers, it's gonna look really good. All right, I'm gonna now start to go to the areas that are a little bit more intense. So I'm gonna grab a little bit more paint, and now my brush is not as wet. So now when I put some paint down, it's gonna be a brighter yellow. Right, and we really do want that brightness. It's gonna make the red pop. Now we don't wanna go all the way to the edge, because if you look at our reference, it actually gets lighter at the edge. So we're gonna keep that area not so intense. All right, there we go. Same for the other side. We wanna keep that not so intense. So I'm going to get some water, dilute the paint a little bit. There we go. Okay. And it is a little bit more intense in here. So far the word of the day is intense. All right, I'm gonna clean my brush. Put the water here so you can see what I'm doing with the water there. Okay, I'm gonna get just a smaller brush. I love this brush. I just got it the other day. It's a Chinese brush. I just love how pointy it stays at the tip, and I'm able to just do a lot of details with this. So to get this green color right here, we're gonna start with the yellow. And remember that the tip of the stem was lightest, so we're gonna just leave that white. All right, next we're gonna get the magenta, and we're gonna put it close to the yellow, because we're gonna end up mixing the two together, right? So this is what I like to do. I like to put yellow right next to the magenta, and I just pull some of the yellow over, and then I pull some of the magenta over, and we get this beautiful red. And we can actually just start putting in some of that red right on the apple. Okay. All right, so that's one method. You can just go into it like that. All right, I'm gonna show you another method, which I think is a little bit funner, right? But it involves making sure the first layer is completely dry. So we're just gonna dry it. I'm using a heat gun. It does not make as much of a noise as like a hair dryer. And it doesn't push out air and push your paint around. So, and it speeds up the process really quickly. So first layer is dry. And what we're gonna do is get some clean water again. Go over what we did. And I'm being very generous with this water. Like there is a lot of water coming off this brush. All right, there we go. I avoided the stem because we don't need to work on the stem right now. All right, but here's why I like doing this. It's called the wet on wet technique. So I can get some of this pure magenta and just dip it. Look at that. And now the water and gravity is working for you. Like you can just put it on there and it will start to move around and cause some beautiful textures that look like an apple, right? In the duller areas, I'm just using less paint. The more you use your brush, the less paint is in there. So I can go over to these areas and it's light because the paint has been used up. But in these areas, I want it to be more intense. So I grab more paint in these areas. And because we're using the wet on wet technique, it is causing a beautiful blend to happen on this apple. If we were doing a dry technique, we wouldn't get these really beautiful blends. Okay. All right, now with watercolor, you have to be sensitive to the time it takes to dry. So I live in Arizona where it gets very hot and things dry quickly. So I have to move pretty fast. But if you you live somewhere where it's like more wet and it rains a lot, then your drying time is a little bit more forgiving. Right. Now in this area, it's not as vivid and red here. So this area, we're gonna keep it not so bright. It is darker down here, but we're gonna use a darker, paler color. Right. All right, now let's get some we're gonna dull this, more water. There we go. Okay. And while it's still a little bit wet here, we can add some more red in this area. And I always like when people see it and they think, man, you must have used so many different colors, and you only used, 2 or 3. All right, we're still in the ugly stage, but we're gonna get out of it pretty soon. Okay. There's not a lot of paint in my brush, so I can come into these areas and put in just a hint of darker color in there. On the stem, I can put in a little bit of the magenta or the orangey color right here. All right, so there we go. I want this to be a little bit more blurred. So I'm just going back in and helping it be a little bit more blurred there. Okay, all right, here we go. Now I'm gonna dry it real quick. Using the heat gun speeds up time. If I wasn't using this and I had to wait for it to dry, which is important to do, then a painting like this can take hours and hours. But thanks to the heat gun, you can knock out a painting like this in about an hour, depending on how detailed the painting is. I mean, this one will probably take about maybe 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, we'll see. All right, so now we're gonna go to the next stage, which is a darker color. So we're gonna, to create that darker color, we're going to use the cyan and we're gonna use the magenta. And I'm gonna put them right next to each other. And whatever paint I don't use, like there'll probably be paint left over, I can always use it for a future painting. All right. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna put some darker reds in here. And so we kind of want a darker purple. Now, if you mix 50% of the magenta and 50% of the cyan, you will get this beautiful purple, okay? We don't really want it to be right in the middle, this purple. We want it to lean more towards a deeper dark red, which means we got to take some of this more into the red, right? So now it's turning into a darker red. And I almost forgot to wet. We got to use the wet on wet technique. So I'm wetting the paper again. We've dried it. So it's safe to put some water on it real quick. We've been keeping the highlight on there pretty good. All right, now there's a layer of water in there. We can come in with our dark red and start. I was gonna say blob it in, but it's not really blobbing it in. It's, you are making a movement that's like a stripe almost. But look at that beautiful color. This is like a cool red. It's darker, but it's like leans more towards the cool colors. And it just looks beautiful next to the warm red right there. I love painting with cool colors and warm colors next to each other. That contrast just kind of grabs our attention. We love contrast, whether it's black and white or whether it's warm or versus cool colors. Our eyes are just drawn to contrast. Right? So now we're paying attention to the texture here. It's not as big as strokes. They're kind of broken up. So we can just put in some of these kind of a little bit carefully. Like that. All right, let's say you put in something you don't really like that much. Like, I don't like that blob I just put in right there. All right, there's a simple thing you can do is you have a little bit of time to clean your brush, dry it a little bit, and just kind of push it around. Spread out the paint, or dry your brush, make it a thirsty brush, and it will soak it up just like that. All right. If you're intimidated by watercolors, all it means is you don't speak the language yet. But like, once you understand how watercolor works, it's like gravity. You can actually anticipate what it's going to do. It's not actually a crazy mystery, you know, how to use watercolors. All right, so I just wanted this area to get a little bit darker down here. Put in some more textures there. A lot of times in paintings, when I start to get closer to the fine details, I do get quieter. So it's because I'm like focusing a lot on those details. So just heads up, if it gets awkwardly quiet, I'm just focusing a lot on putting in these details. All right, so on this side, it's not so much of a purple, it's just a dark red. So I'm gonna grab more of this magenta, and I'm gonna get some of this yellow, like this. Now it's this darker red, almost a muted red, and I'm going to use it on this section here. Okay, we could get it even more muted. When I say muted, it's like getting closer and closer, almost to a, not a muddy color, but to get that muted color, you just add more and more cyan. Some people, they want to paint with just their favorite colors all the time, thinking if you just use bright colors, it's just, everything's gonna pop. But using all bright colors is like highlighting a book. If you highlight every single word on the page, you really highlight nothing. So you actually want some of these muted colors. You want them to make your other colors shine. It's a background. It plays second fiddle, so to speak, but it's so important because without it, nothing really shines. All right, see how it's getting darker and darker, and then this area is staying light. I'm noticing that it's getting drier up here, which means I can start actually putting in some details. This is where the brush I'm using right now kind of shines, because it's able to do broad strokes, and then it's able to do these little tiny lines. If you go really fast, you can create some really cool texture. But this only works when the paper is getting dry, and it's starting to get dry, so I can come in here and create some, watch this. Look at that, just beautiful texture real quick. All right, I'll do it here. There's a lot of texture here, so I'll get some of that color and just go really quick over this section to create some of those details there. This area is darker, so we're going to mute it like this. As it comes up, it's not as muted, but still muted a little bit, so we've diluted it a little bit with water. All right. Getting a little bit of this magenta here. I want to just soften this area. Make it a nicer gradient from light to darker. All right. All right, and if I wanted to, I could really take my time from here on out and really start to make this apple look 3D. But I want to do enough so that you get the idea of what you can do using these 4 colors. I'm focusing on the direction of the lines. Let's focus a little bit on the stem while we let this dry for a bit. I actually want to just smooth this out a little bit. Make it a smoother gradient. So I'm just kind of reactivating and then pulling color away. Cleaning my brush, drying it, coming back, and pulling color away. There we go. Okay, so to make the stem green, we take some of this yellow. I'll just get some of it right here, and I'll bring it over here towards the blue. And we want it very diluted because we don't want a bright neon green. We want it to be just a light green. So we dilute it with water. We come back in and we can actually just put in that nice layer of green. There's actually a little bit of green down here, so we'll just add in some of the green down here like that. All right, this area right here, I want that to be a smoother transition. I don't want it to be so abrupt like that, so I'm just taking clean water, reactivating that area, and now I'm dispersing the paint so that it's a smoother transition there. I'm just gonna dry it real quick. All right. On a future live, I plan on doing grapes, pizza slice. We'll do that right there. We'll just keep using only these 4 colors. All right, to check it, you always use the back of your hand because it has less oils than the front of your hands. So now we're gonna start darkening up stem, and I'm going to use a little bit of the orange, and I'm gonna kind of muddy it up with some of the blue. That should muddy it up. There we go. So now it's this brownish muddy color, and we're gonna start putting in the dark areas. As we put in the dark areas, like I said earlier, our eyes are naturally attracted to contrast. So the darker things get on the painting, it's gonna look more realistic, and our eyes will be more and more attracted to it. We like contrast of darks and lights, and we like contrast of warm and cool colors. This has some warm reds and some cool reds playing off of each other. We tend to like that. All right, again. There we go. Okay, and then I want to dilute this a little bit, so I just take off some of it, and then I can come in and put a little bit down here and a little bit down here, going in the direction of the apple. Okay. Just dry it real quick. Another reason why I love this heat gun is that it's not very loud, so I can keep talking to you guys. I don't have to wait to talk to you. I can just keep talking while I'm using it. With a hairdryer, you can't do that. Now we're going to use a darker purple. We'll use a little bit of that orange. We'll just put another layer. Right. That's one thing about realism. It just takes a little bit more time, but I think it's super rewarding. Like I love capturing what's actually already there. All right, now we can even introduce some of the black here to make it start to pop more. So I'm gonna put the black right here. And I don't wanna just use pure black. I want to mix it in with maybe the purple, maybe a little bit of the brown that we did, and start to, let's see here. Oh, it needs a little bit more. I want to keep the texture, and I'm noticing the textures that are there. There's some stripes and lines on there. I want to keep those. we go. There's some dots in here. Little, what are they called? Sunspots on the apple. Let's make sure this is dry. Now we're exiting the ugly stage and we're getting into the beautiful stage. We're in the last few layers of putting on details. I'm gonna put one more layer of water. Okay. I'm gonna get that red color. I'm gonna get some of that purple. And I'm gonna start dropping in that purple down here to make it darker and that dull color. Just getting darker, so it's gonna start to look like it's popping more. And then we want some of this red in here. All right, got real quiet because I'm putting in all those little details. All right. Now notice I can go really fast and put in some quick details right here on the edge. Okay. All right, and then in some of those areas, I want it to be super dark, so I'm going to add some black and just drop in some black here. Now this is a muted black, it's not pure black, it's mixed in with some of those purples and reds, so it feels like it belongs right there on top of the skin there. When I clean my brush, I want the most vivid red, so I'm getting a clean brush. I'm getting some of the yellow, and I'm just coming back in here and putting in some vivid reds here. Whenever you want something really vivid and not dull, just clean your brush and get the pure pigment and mix it again. Let's get some of the yellow. I want to just put in a little bit of yellow here. I want to make this a little bit more orange, so I'm going to get some of that orange and just put it right on there. All right, I'm swapping my water for cleaner water so that I can do what I want it to do. Clean my brush really good. Dry it a little bit so we have a damp brush. I'm just going to go over the edge. Like that. Clean my brush again. And what I'm looking to do is just soften the edge to make it lighter and blend better. So it's just a series of reactivating, cleaning my brush, making it a little bit thirsty so I can take up some of that color. Clean my brush and repeat. Here. There. Okay. Now we're on to the very last little bits. All right. This is dry now. And now what we're going to do, we don't want a very pointy brush. We want it to be actually a little bit frayed. I call it a bad hair day. We want it a little bit frayed. We're going to get some of this magenta. We're going to get some of this blue and turn it into this purple. All right, and we're gonna get a little bit of this yellow. There we go. And now what we want is, let me show you, I can bring this up. We don't want a sharp little line. We want actually several different lines. So we want to actually get our brush frayed, and that way we can create texture like this. Okay, I just need a tad bit of water. There we go. And now I'm putting in just lots of little detail very quickly. I don't know if you can tell because it's farther away, but from where I am, I can see the details going on. And I think it just takes it to the next level. Just a tad bit of water. We want it to be a little bit darker. There we go. Frayed brush, very frayed, and we can go in and put in those details. Look at that, just lots of details right away because of that frayed brush. All right, Alright guys, I'm getting very close to the end. Depending on how detailed I want to get on this apple, I can spend another hour or two doing some fine details to make it look even more realistic. All right, but you get the idea. All right, so pretty simple. We knocked this out, I think, in about, I don't know, 40 minutes or so. On my website, watercolorshock.com, you can buy a mug that actually has the color wheel, and it has the cyan, yellow, and magenta, and then it has the secondary colors. When you mix those, the cyan and yellow, you get the green, the yellow and the magenta, you get the red, the magenta and the cyan, you get the purple, and then all these different colors around. And I like this because sometimes we can forget, we don't have it memorized, but having this right next to your palette, you can just look up and be like, oh yeah, I need to mix a little bit of the cyan with the yellow to get that. You can store your brushes in the cup, you can put water in it and actually use it while you're doing watercolor, and you can even put coffee in this cup. If you want to learn watercolors, join my watercolor community on the school app. Let me tell you about this community. It is a community for people of all different levels. You might be a beginner or you might be a professional. Whatever question you have, you can get your questions answered. Inside this community, there are tips, tutorials, classroom modules, reference images that will help you to get better at watercolors very quickly. These are some of my students. This is their first time painting a very large watercolor painting. Sign up today by tapping the bio link.